These Small Hours with Russell Cordell Staker. Hello, my friends. This is Russell Cordell Staker, and this is the Small Hours podcast. Welcome back. It is the 24th of May, 2022, and summer is making its presence known here in Austin, Texas. It's starting to get hot, and when that heat switch gets flipped on, it stays on until we get into the late fall. So I'm bracing myself for probably what's going to be a really hot summer. So I don't know what your weather is going to be like, but we like it hot here in Texas. Today is going to be the reading of segment 2 of Walt Whitman's 1855 original edition of Leaves of Grass. I apologize that it's been a little while since the last reading, and I'm going to commit myself to getting through the subsequent segments that I'm going to do of this so that I can get to the conclusion, which I think will be hopefully enlightening for you. And at that point, there are some new things coming. So this is kind of like a segue. So if you're still listening, and maybe you're not interested in listening to a reading, but the reason why I'm doing this is I feel very strongly about the language of Walt Whitman and the vistas that it opens up in terms of what the mind is able to consider in the power of the words that Whitman chooses. And it's very prophetic in some of its nuanced way of expressing itself. Whitman was able to take time and condense it into the moment in which he was writing it, but at the same time it projects itself out into this omnivorous, omnipotent, and infinite space that allows for a lot of possibility thinking. And I think that's really important. And especially for me, and I'm hoping for you as well at this particular moment in the world, it just seems like it's just such a dark time. There's so many things that are going wrong. There's so many frustrating aspects of the world that we live in. And sometimes it's easy to give into this nihilistic sense of no hope, that maybe where we're going is a nowhere. Maybe the meaning of this life feels like a nothing. And we have to, at least for me personally, I'm speaking about myself, I have to make an active choice to fight against that and to say, no, this is not a journey through nihilism. This is a journey through humanity. And what keeps me grounded is the language of life and the language of humanity. You can see it in a painting. You can hear it in something that you read. You can listen to it in a song. Any kind of artistic expression that reminds us of who we are and why we're here right now is worth the effort to listen to. And that's why I'm reading Walt Whitman right now. So even if you're initially thinking, I don't want to listen to this, I really hope that you will, because as I get through the end of this and then where I'm going to go with the conclusion and then what I'm going to introduce for my podcast going forward, I think there's a lot of symmetry here that still can be beneficial. So as I've mentioned in the previous podcast and the one where I introduced this, at this point in my own projection as a writer, as an artist in his own way with a voice that he's developing, I'm doing this also so that I can encourage myself to continue to pursue the power of language. And I'm going to reach for the sources that are inspiring to me that enable me to do that more and more fully, because I believe not only does it make me a better man, but it's also going to encourage the artistic expression as well as just the impact that I can have around not only my family, but the people that I get to know and walk amongst throughout the course of my life as I go through this journey before I go across that great divide. Ultimately, we are all heading out that direction. And I think the point right now is to make the moment now and the journey forward as full and as meaningful and as human as it possibly can. So please sit back, enjoy segment 2 of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, the original 1855 edition. And I hope you're well. I'll talk to you on the other side of this reading. For those who may want to follow along, I'm beginning at the beginning of page 37 of the paperback version of the 1855 Walt Whitman Leaves of Grass. I concluded segment 1 at the bottom of page 36. Prodigal, you have given me love. Therefore I to you give love. O unspeakable, passionate love. Thruster holding me tight, and that I hold tight. We hurt each other as the bridegroom and the bride hurt each other. You see, I resign myself to you also. I guess what you mean. I behold from the beach your crooked inviting fingers. I believe you refuse to go back without feeling of me. We must have a turn together. I undress. Hurry me out of sight of the land. Cushion me soft. Rock me in billowy drowse. Dash me with amorous wet. I can repay you. Sea of stretched ground swells. Sea breathing broad and convulsive breaths. Sea of the brine of life. Sea of unshoveled and always ready graves. Howler and scooper of storms. Capricious and dainty sea. I am integral with you. I too am one of one phase and of all phases. Partaker of influx and efflux, extoller of hate and conciliation, extoller of emise and those that sleep in each other's arms. I am he attesting sympathy. Shall I make my list of things in the house and skip the house that supports them? I am the poet of common sense and of the demonstrable and of immortality. And am not the poet of goodness only. I do not decline to be the poet of wickedness also. Washes and razors for foo-foos. For me, freckles and a bristling beard. What blurt is it about virtue and about vice? Evil propels me, and reform of evil propels me. I stand indifferent. My gait is no fault-finder's or rejecter's gait. I moisten the roots of all that is grown. Did you fear the scrofula out of the unflagging pregnancy? Did you guess the celestial laws are yet to be worked over and rectified? I step up to say what we do is right, and what we affirm is right, and some is only the or of right. Witnesses of us, one side a balance, and the antipodal side a balance. Soft doctrine is steady, help is stable doctrine. Thoughts and deeds of the present are rouse and early start. This minute that comes to me over the past decillions, there is no better than it and now. What behaved well in the past or behaves well today is not such a wonder. The wonder is always and always how there can be a mean man or an infidel. Endless unfolding of words of ages, and mine a word of the modern, a word in mass. A word of the faith that never balks. One time as good as another time. Or, here or henceforward, it is all the same to me. A word of reality, materialism first and last imbuing. Hurrah for positive science. Long live exact demonstration. Fetch stone crop and mix it with cedar and branches of lilac. This is the lexicographer or chemist. This made a grammar of the old cartouches. These mariners put the ship through dangerous unknown seas. This is the geologist, and this works with the scalpel, and this is a mathematician. Gentlemen, I receive you and attach and clasp hands with you. The facts are useful and real. They are not my dwelling. I enter by them to an area of the dwelling. I am less the reminder of property or qualities and more the reminder of life. And go on the square for my own sake and for others' sakes, and make short account of neuters and geldings, and favor men and women fully equipped, and beat the gong of revolt, and stop with fugitives and them that plot and conspire. Walt Whitman, an American, one of the roughs, a cosmos, disorderly, fleshy, and sensual, eating, drinking, and breeding, no sentimentalist, no stander above men or women or apart from them, no more modest than immodest. Unscrew the locks from the doors, unscrew the doors themselves from their jambs. Whoever degrades another degrades me, and whatever is done or said returns at last to me, and whatever I do or say, I also return. Through the afflatus, surging and surging through me the current and index. I speak the password primeval. I give the sign of democracy. By God, I will accept nothing which all cannot have their counterpart of on the same terms. Through me, many long dumb voices, voices of the interminable generations of slaves, voices of prostitutes and of deformed persons, voices of the diseased and despairing, and of thieves and dwarfs, voices of cycles of preparation and accretion, and of the threads that connect the stars, and of the wombs, and of the father stuff. and of the rights of them the others are down upon, of the trivial and flat and foolish and despised, of fog in the air and beetles rolling balls of dung. Through me forbidden voices, voices of sexes and lusts, voices veiled, and I remove the veil, voices indecent by me clarified and transfigured. I do not press my finger across my mouth. I keep as delicate around the bowels as around the head and heart. Copulation is no more rank to me than death is. I believe in the flesh and the appetites. Seeing, hearing, and feeling are miracles, and each part and tag of me is a miracle. Divine am I inside and out, and I make holy whatever I touch or am touched from. The scent of these armpits is aroma finer than prayer. This head is more than churches or Bibles or creeds. If I worship any particular thing, it shall be some of the spread of my body. Translucent mold of me, it shall be you. Shaded ledges and rests, firm, masculine culture, it shall be you. Whatever goes to the tilth of me, it shall be you. You, my rich blood, your milky stream, pale strippings of my life. Breast that presses against other breasts, it shall be you. My brain, it shall be your occult convolutions. Root of washed, sweet flag, timorous, pond snipe, nest of guarded duplicate eggs, it shall be you. Mixed, tousled hay of head and beard and brawn, it shall be you. Trickling sap of maple, fiber of manly wheat, it shall be you. Sun so generous, it shall be you. Vapors lighting and shading my face, it shall be you. You sweaty brooks and dews, it shall be you. Winds whose soft tickling genitals rub against me, it shall be you. Broad muscular fields, branches of live oak, loving lounger in my winding paths, it shall be you. Hands I have taken, face I have kissed, mortal I have ever touched, it shall be you. I dote on myself, there is that lot of me, and also luscious. Each moment and whatever happens thrills me with joy. I cannot tell how my ankles bend, nor whence the cause of my faintest wish, nor the cause of the friendship I emit, nor the cause of the friendship I take again. To walk up my stoop is unaccountable. I pause to consider if it really be. That I eat and drink is spectacle enough for the great authors and schools. A morning glory at my window satisfies me more than the metaphysics of books. To behold the daybreak, the little light fades the immense and diaphanous shadows, the air tastes good to my palate. Hefts of the moving world at innocent gambols, silently rising, freshly exuding, soothing obliquely high and low. Something I cannot see puts upward libidinous prongs, seas of bright juice suffuse heaven. The earth by the sky stayed, the daily close of their junction, the heaved challenge from the east, that moment over my head, the mocking taunt. See then whether you shall be master. Dazzling and tremendous how quick the sunrise would kill me, if I could not now and always send sunrise out of me. We also ascend dazzling and tremendous as the sun. We found our own soul in the calm and cool of daybreak. My voice goes after what my eyes cannot reach. With the twirl of my tongue, I encompass worlds and volumes of worlds. Speech is the twin of my vision. It is unequal to measure itself. It provokes me forever. It says sarcastically, Walt, you understand enough. Why don't you let it out then? Come now, I will, and not be tantalized. You conceive too much of articulation. Do you not know how the buds beneath are folded? Waiting in gloom, protected by frost, the dirt receding before my prophetical screams, I underlying cause to balance them at last. My knowledge, my live parts, it keeping tally with the meaning of things. Happiness, which whoever hears me, let him or her set out in search of this very day. My final merit, I refuse you. I refuse putting from me the best I am. Encompass worlds, but never try to encompass me. I crowd your noisiest talk by looking toward you. Writing and talk do not prove me. I carry the plenum of proof and everything else in my face. With the hush of my lips, I confound the topmost skeptic. I think I will do nothing for a long time but listen, and accrue what I hear into myself, and let the sounds contribute toward me. I hear the bravuras of birds, the bustle of growing wheat, gossip of flames, clack of sticks cooking my meals. I hear the sound of the human voice, a sound I love. I hear all sounds as they are tuned to their uses, sounds of the city and sounds out of the city, sounds of the day and night, talkative young ones to those that like them, the recitative of fish peddlers and fruit peddlers, the loud laugh of work people at their meals, the angry bass of disjointed friendship, the faint tones of the sick, the judge with hands tied on the desk, his shaky lips pronouncing a death sentence, the heave-o of stevedores unlading ships by the wharves, the refrain of the anchor lifters, The ring of alarm bells, the cry of fire, the whir of swift-streaking engines and horse carts, with premonitory tinkles and colored lights. The steam whistle, the solid roll of the train of approaching cars, the slow march played at night at the head of the association. They go to guard some corpse. The flag tops are draped with black muslin. I hear violoncello or man's heart's complaint, and hear the keyed cornet, or else the echo of sunset. I hear the chorus. It is a grand opera. This indeed is music. A tenor large and fresh as the creation fills me. The orbic flex of his mouth is pouring and filling me full. I hear the trained soprano. She convulses me like the climax of my love grip. The orchestra whirls me wider than Uranus flies. It wrenches unnameable ardors from my breast. It throbs me to gulps of the farthest down horror. It sails me. I dab with bare feet. They are licked by the indolent waves. I am exposed, cut by bitter and poisoned hail, steeped amid honeyed morphine, my windpipe squeezed in the fakes of death, let up again to feel the puzzle of puzzles, and that we call being. To be any form, what is that? If nothing lay more developed, the quahog and its callous shell were enough. Mine is no callous shell. I have instant conductors all over me, whether I pass or stop. They seize every object and lead it harmlessly through me. I merely stir, press, feel with my fingers, and am happy. To touch my person to someone else's is about as much as I can stand. Is this then a touch, quivering me to a new identity, flames and ether making rush for my veins, treacherous tip of me reaching and crowding to help them, my flesh and blood playing out lightning to strike what is hardly different from myself, on all sides prurient provokers stiffening my limbs, straining the udder of my heart for its withheld drip, behaving licentious toward me, taking no denial, depriving me of my best as for a purpose, unbuttoning my clothes and holding me by the bare waist, diluting my confusion with the calm of the sunlight and pasture fields, immodestly sliding the fellow senses away. They bribe to swap off with touch and go and graze at the edges of me. No consideration, no regard for my draining strength or my anger, fetching the rest of the herd around to enjoy them a while, then all uniting to stand on a headland and worry me. The sentries desert every other part of me. They have left me helpless to a red marauder. They all come to the headland to witness and assist against me. I am given up by traitors. I talk wildly. I have lost my wits. I and nobody else am the greatest traitor. I went myself first to the headland. My own hands carried me there. You villain touch, what are you doing? My breath is tight in its throat. Unclench your floodgates. You are too much for me. Blind, loving, wrestling touch, sheathed, hooded, sharp-toothed touch. Did it make you ache so leaving me? Parting tracked by arriving perpetual payment of the perpetual loan, rich showering rain, and recompense richer afterward. Sprouts take and accumulate, stand by the curb prolific and vital, landscapes projected masculine full-sized and golden. All truths wait in all things. They neither hasten their own delivery nor resist it. They do not need the obstetric forceps of the surgeon. The insignificant is as big to me as any. What is less or more than a touch? Logic and sermons never convince. The damp of the night drives deeper into my soul. Only what proves itself to every man and woman is so. Only what nobody denies is so. A minute and a drop of me settle my brain. I believe the soggy clods shall become lovers and lamps. And a compend of compends is the meat of a man or woman, and a summit and flower, there is the feeling they have for each other. And they are to branch boundlessly out of that lesson until it becomes omnific, and until everyone shall delight us and we them. I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars, and the pismire is equally perfect, and a grain of sand and the egg of the wren. And the tree toad is the chef d'oeuvre for the highest, and the running blackberry would adorn the parlors of heaven. And the narrowest hinge in my head puts to scorn all machinery, and the cow crunching with depressed head surpasses any statue. And a mouse is miracle enough to stagger sextillions of infidels. And I could come every afternoon of my life to look at the farmer's girl boiling her iron tea kettle and baking shortcake. I find I incorporate gneiss and coal and long-threaded moss and fruits and grains and esculent roots, and am stuccoed with quadrupeds and birds all over, and have distanced what is behind me for good reasons, and call anything close again when I desire it. In vain the speeding or shyness. In vain the plutonic rocks send their old heat against my approach. In vain the mastodon retreats beneath its own powdered bones. In vain objects stand leagues off and assume manifold shapes. In vain the ocean settling in hollows and the great monsters lying low. In vain the buzzard houses herself with the sky. In vain the snake slides through the creepers and logs. In vain the elk takes to the inner passes of the woods. In vain the razor-billed auk sails far north to Labrador. I follow quickly. I ascend to the nest in the fissure of the cliff. I think I could turn and live a while with the animals. They are so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them sometimes half the day long. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. No one is dissatisfied. Not one is demented with the mania of owning things. Not one kneels to another, nor to his kind that lived thousands of years ago. No one is respectable or industrious over the whole earth. So they show their relations to me, and I accept them. They bring me tokens of myself. They evince them plainly in their possession. I do not know where they got those tokens. I must have passed that way untold times ago and negligently dropped them. Myself moving forward then and now and forever, gathering and showing more always, and with velocity, infinite and omnigenous, and the like of these among them, not too exclusive toward the reachers of my remembrancers, picking out here one that shall be my ami, choosing to go with him on brotherly terms. A gigantic beauty of a stallion, fresh and responsive to my caresses, head high in the forehead and wide between the ears, limbs glossy and supple, tail dusting the ground, eyes well apart and full of sparkling wickedness, ears finely cut and flexibly moving. His nostrils dilate, my heels embrace him. His well-built limbs tremble with pleasure. We speed around and return. I bet use you a moment, and then I resign you, stallion, and do not need your paces, and outgallop them. And myself, as I stand or sit, pass faster than you. Swift wind, space, my soul. Now I know it is true, what I guessed at. What I guessed at when I loafed on the grass, what I guessed while I lay alone in my bed, and again as I walked the beach under the paling stars of the morning. My ties and ballasts leave me. I travel, I sail, my elbows rest in the sea gaps. I skirt the Sierras, my palms over the continents. I am afoot with my vision. By the city's quadrangular houses, in log huts or camping with lumbermen, along the ruts of the turnpike, along the dry gulch and rivulet bed, hoeing my onion patch and rows of carrots and parsnips, crossing savannas trailing in forests, prospecting gold digging, girdling the trees of a new purchase, scorched ankle deep by the hot sand, hauling my boat down the shallow river. Whether the panther walks to and fro on a limb overhead, where the buck turns furiously at the hunter. Where the rattlesnake suns his flabby length on a rock, where the otter is feeding on a fish, where the alligator in his tough pimples sleeps by the bayou, where the black bear is searching for roots or honey, where the beaver pats the mud with his paddle tail, over the growing sugar, over the cotton plant, over the rice in its low moist field, over the sharp-peaked farmhouse with its scalloped scum and slender shoots from the gutters, over the western persimmon, over the long-leaved corn and the delicate blue-flowered flax, over the white and brown buckwheat, a hummer and a buzzer, there with the rest, over the dusky green of the rye as it ripples and shades in the breeze, scaling mountains, pulling myself cautiously up, holding on by low scragged limbs, walking the path worn in the grass and beat through the leaves of the brush, where the quail is whistling betwixt the woods and the wheat lot, where the bat flies in the July eve, where the great gold bug drops through the dark, where the flails keep time on the barn floor, where the brook puts out of the roots of the old tree and flows to the meadow, where cattle stand and shake away flies with the tremendous shuddering of their hides, where the cheesecloth hangs in the kitchen and andirons straddle the hearth slab and cobwebs fall in festoons from the rafters, where trip hammers crash, where the press is whirling its cylinders, wherever the human heart beats with terrible throes out of its ribs, where the pear-shaped balloon is floating aloft, floating in it myself and looking composedly down, where the life car is drawn on the slip noose, where the heat hatches pale green eggs in the dented sand, where the she-whale swims with her calves and never forsakes them, where the steamship trails hindways its long pennant of smoke, where the ground shark's fin cuts like a black chip out of the water, where the half-burned brig is riding on unknown currents, where the shells grow to her slimy deck and the dead are corrupting below, where the striped and starred flag is borne at the head of the regiments. Approaching Manhattan up by the long-stretched island under Niagara, the cataract falling like a veil over my countenance, upon a doorstep, upon the horse block of hardwood outside, upon the race course, or enjoying picnics or jigs or a good game of baseball. At he festivals with blackguard jibes, and ironical license and bowl dances and drinking and laughter. At the cider mill, tasting the sweet of the brown squash, sucking the juice through a straw. At apple peelings, wanting kisses for all the red fruit I find. At musters and beach parties and friendly bees and huskings and house raisings, where the mockingbird sounds his delicious gurgles and cackles and screams and weeps, where the hayrick stands in the barnyard and the dry stalks are scattered, and the brood cow waits in the hovel, where the bull advances to do his masculine work and the stud to the mare, and the cock is treading the hen, where the heifers browse and the geese nip their food with short jerks, where the sundown shadows lengthen over the limitless and lonesome prairie, where the herds of buffalo making a crawling spread of the square miles far and near, where the hummingbird shimmers, where the neck of the long-lived swan is curving and winding, where the laughing gull scoots by the slappy shore and laughs her near-human laugh, where beehives range on a gray bench in the garden, half hid by the high weeds, where the band-necked partridges roost in a ring on the ground with their heads out, where burial coaches enter the arched gates of a cemetery, where winter wolves bark amid wastes of snow and icicled trees, where the yellow-crowned heron comes to the edge of the marsh at night and feeds upon small crabs, where the splash of swimmers and divers cools the warm noon, where the katydid works her chromatic reed on the walnut tree over the well, through patches of citrons and cucumbers with silver-wired leaves, through the salt lick or orange glade, or under conical firs, through the gymnasium, through the curtained saloon, through the office or public hall, pleased with the native and pleased with the foreign, pleased with the new and old. Pleased with women, the homely as well as the handsome, pleased with the Quakeress as she puts off her bonnet and talks melodiously, pleased with the primitive tunes of the choir of the whitewashed church, pleased with the earnest words of the sweating Methodist preacher or any preacher, looking seriously at the camp meeting, looking in at the shop windows in Broadway, the whole forenoon pressing the flesh of my nose to the thick plate glass. Wandering the same afternoon with my face turned up to the clouds, my right and left arms round the sides of two friends, and I in the middle. Coming home with the bearded and dark-cheeked bush boy riding behind him at the drape of day. Far from the settlement, studying the print of animals' feet or the moccasin print, by the cot in the hospital reaching lemonade to a feverish patient, by the coffined corpse when all is still, examining with a candle, voyaging to every port to dicker and adventure, hurrying with the modern crowd as eager and fickle as any, hot toward one I hate, ready in my madness to knife him, solitary at midnight in my backyard, my thoughts gone from me a long while, walking the old hills of Judea with the beautiful, gentle God by my side. Speeding through space, speeding through heaven and the stars, speeding amid the 7 satellites and the broad ring and the diameter of 80,000 miles, speeding with tailed meteors, throwing fireballs like the rest, carrying the crescent child that carries its own full mother in its belly, storming, enjoying, planning, loving, cautioning, backing and filling, appearing and disappearing. I tread day and night such roads. I visit the orchards of God and look at the spheric product, and look at quintillions ripened, and look at quintillions green. I fly the flight of the fluid and swallowing soul. My course runs below the soundings of plummets. I help myself to material and immaterial. No guard can shut me off. No law can prevent me. I anchor my ship for a little while. Only my messengers continually cruise away or bring their returns to me. I go hunting polar furs and the seal, leaping chasms with a pike-pointed staff, clinging to topples of brittle and blue. I ascend to the foretruck. I take my place late at night in the crow's nest. We sail through the Arctic Sea. It is plenty light enough. Through the clear atmosphere, I stretch around on the wonderful beauty. The enormous masses of ice pass me and I pass them. The scenery is plain in all directions. The white-topped mountains point up in the distance. I fling out my fancies toward them. We are about approaching some great battlefield in which we are soon to be engaged. We pass the colossal outposts of the encampments. We pass the still feet and caution. Or we are entering by the suburbs some vast and ruined city, the blocks and fallen architecture more than all the living cities of the globe. I am a free companion. I bivouac by invading watchfires. I turn the bridegroom out of bed and stay with the bride myself, and tighten her all night to my thighs and lips. My voice is the wife's voice, the screech by the rail of the stairs. They fetch my man's body up dripping and drowned. I understand the large hearts of heroes, the courage of present times and all times. How the skipper saw the crowded and rudderless wreck of the steamship, and death chasing it up and down the storm, how he knuckled tight and gave not back 1 inch, and was faithful of days and faithful of nights, and chalked in large letters on a board, "Be of good cheer, we will not desert you." How he saved the drifting company at last, how the lank, loose-gowned women looked when boated from the side of their prepared graves, how the silent, old-faced infants and the lifted sick and the sharp-lipped, unshaven men. All this I swallow, and it tastes good. I like it well, and it becomes mine. I am the man. I suffered. I was there. The disdain and calmness of martyrs. The mother condemned for a witch and burnt with dry wood, and her children gazing on. The hounded slave that flags in the race and leans by the fence, blowing and covered with sweat. The twinges that sting like needles his legs and neck. The murderous buckshot and the bullets. All these I feel or am. I am the hounded slave. I wince at the bite of the dogs. Hell and despair are upon me. Crack and again, crack the marksman. I clutch the rails of the fence. My gourd dribs, thinned with the ooze of my skin. I fall on the weeds and stones. The riders spur their unwilling horses and haul close. They taunt my dizzy ears. They beat me violently over the head with their whip stalks. Agonies are one of my changes of garments. I do not ask the wounded person how he feels. I myself become the wounded person. My hurt turns livid upon me as I lean on a cane and observe. I am the mashed fireman with breastbone broken. Tumbling walls buried me in their debris. Heat and smoke I inspired. I heard the yelling shouts of my comrades. I heard the distant click of their pricks and shovels. They have cleared the beams away. They tenderly lift me forth. I lie in the night air in my red shirt. The pervading hush is for my sake. Painless after all I lie, exhausted but not so unhappy. White and beautiful are the faces around me. The heads are bared of their fire caps. The kneeling crowd fades with the light of the torches. Distant and dead resuscitate. They show as the dial or move as the hands of me, and I am the clock myself. I am an old artillerist, and tell of some fort's bombardment, and am there again. Again, the reveille of drummers, again the attacking cannon and mortars and howitzers. Again, the attacked send their cannon responsive. I take part, I see and hear the whole. The cries and curses and roar, the plaudits for well-aimed shots, the ambulanza slowly passing and trailing its red drip. Working men searching after damages and to make indispensable repairs. The fall of grenades through the rent roof, the fan-shaped explosion, the whiz of limbs, heads, stone wood, and iron high in the air. Again gurgles the mouth of my dying general. He furiously waves with his hand. He gasps through the clot. Mind not me, mind the entrenchments. I tell not the fall of Alamo. Not one escaped to tell the fall of Alamo. The 150 are dumb yet at Alamo. Hear now the tale of a jet-black sunrise. Hear of the murder in cold blood of 412 young men. Retreating, they had formed in a hollow square with their baggage for breastworks. 900 lives out of the surrounding enemies, 9 times their number, was the price they took in advance. Their colonel was wounded and their ammunition gone. They treated for an honorable capitulation, received writing and seal, gave up their arms, and marched back prisoners of war. They were the glory of the race of rangers, matchless with a horse, a rifle, a song, a supper, or a courtship, large, turbulent, brave, handsome, generous, proud, and affectionate, bearded, sunburnt, dressed in the free costume of hunters, not a single one over the age of 30 years. The second Sunday morning, they were brought out in squads and massacred. It was beautiful early summer. The work commenced about 5 o'clock and was over by 8. None obeyed the command to kneel. Some made a mad and helpless rush. Some stood stark and straight. A few fell at once, shot in the temple or heart. The living and dead lay together. The maimed and mangled dug in the dirt. The newcomers saw them there. Some half-killed attempt to crawl away. These were dispatched with bayonets or battered with the blunts of muskets. A youth not 17 years old seized his assassin till 2 more came to release him. The three were all torn and covered with the boys' blood. At 11 o'clock began the burning of the bodies, and that is the tale of the murder of the 412 young men, and that was a jet black sunrise. Did you read in the sea books of the old-fashioned frigate fight? Did you learn who won by the light of the moon and stars? Our foe was no skulk in his ship, I tell you. His was the English pluck, and there is no tougher or truer, and never was and never will be. Along the lowered eve he came, horribly raking us. We closed with him, the yards entangled, the cannon touched, my captain lashed fast with his own hands. We had received some 18-pound shots under the water. On our lower gun deck, 2 large pieces had burst at the first fire, killing all around and blowing up overhead. 10 o'clock at night, and the full moon shining and the leaks on the gain, and 5 feet of water reported, the master-at-arms loosing the prisoners confined in the afterhold to give them a chance for themselves. The transit to and from the magazine was now stopped by the sentinels. They saw so many strange faces they did not know whom to trust. Our frigate was afire. The other asked if we demanded quarters, if our colors were struck, and the fighting done. I laughed content when I heard the voice of my little captain. "We have not struck," he composedly cried. "We have just begun our part of the fighting." Only 3 guns were in use. One was directed by the captain himself against the enemy's main mast. 2 well served with grape and canister silenced his musketry and cleared his decks. The tops alone seconded the fire of this little battery, especially the main top. They all held out bravely during the whole of the action. Not a moment's cease. The leaks gained fast on the pumps. The fire eat toward the powder magazine. One of the pumps was shot away. It was generally thought we were sinking. Serene stood the little captain. He was not hurried. His voice was neither high nor low. His eyes gave more light to us than our battle lanterns. Toward 12 at night, there in the beams of the moon, they surrendered to us. Stretched and still lay the midnight. 2 great hulls, motionless on the breast of the darkness, our vessel riddled and slowly sinking, preparations to pass to the one we had conquered, the captain on the quarterdeck coldly giving his orders through a countenance white as a sheet. Nearby the corpse of the child that served in the cabin, the dead face of an old salt with long white hair and carefully curled whiskers. The flames, spite of all that could be done, flickering aloft and below, the husky voices of the 2 or 3 officers yet fit for duty. Formless stacks of bodies, and bodies by themselves, dabs of flesh upon the masts and spars, the cut of cordage and dangle of rigging, the slight shock of the soothe of waves, black and impassive guns, and litter of powder parcels and the strong scent, delicate sniffs of the sea breeze, smells of sedgy grass and fields by the shore, death messages given in charge to survivors, the hiss of the surgeon's knife and the gnawing teeth of his saw, the wheeze, the cluck, the swash of falling blood, the short, wild scream, the long, dull, tapering groan. These irretrievable. And there I shall conclude segment 2 of the reading of Walt Whitman's 1855 edition of The Leaves of Grass. I'm about 3/4 of the way down on page 53 of the particular edition that I'm holding in my hands right now. I want to make one comment as I've been reading this, and I've alluded to this a little bit when I did the introductory trailer to this. I really don't know how many times I've read Leaves of Grass, and I think actually that's a disservice to say it that way, because I probably had a copy of Leaves of Grass with me since college. I don't think I even attempted Walt Whitman. I actually take it back. In high school, when the Dead Poets Society came out, and Ethan Hawke's character with Robin Williams talked about the sweaty-toothed madman. I'm pretty sure I picked up some Whitman then, and I probably would have been, I can't remember when the movie came out, but early in high school, I'm sure I probably dabbled in it. But from college on, I pretty much have always had a copy of Leaves of Grass. And so to say that I've read it through from beginning to end is probably not really true. I've been reading Leaves of Grass in different moments and in portions, probably for the rest of my life up to this point. But about 2 years ago, right around the time the pandemic was really kicking in, I have a hardbound copy of the full Leaves of Grass, which encompasses the later editions of Whitman's work. And I remember I read that straight through, and I'm glad that I read it at that time, because it was a great solace to me in the language. And what I wanted to comment on in this moment, as I've been reading this aloud on this recording, and will continue through until I finish this reading through the various segments that I'm going to do, is that even though I'm very familiar with the words, as I read it, what happens is I do feel as if I'm giving myself over to the author, to Whitman himself. And the feeling I have, and I'm going to try to give this the best description, it's like grabbing hold of a train car. Not that I've ever done this, but it's an imagined sense of what I think it would feel like. But like, in the old cartoons or like an old Western, those train cars where it's got the little pulley lever where there's two guys that stand up there and they pump back and forth, and it generates the power for that train car to go down the track, the railed track. That's how it feels for me. Like I've gotten a hold of that, and there's this momentum that takes over. And so as I'm reading it, even though I know that the words should be what they are, sometimes I mispronounce certain words because in the moment, the motion of the words is carrying me through. And I'm trying my level best to keep abreast and at pace with what Whitman is trying to say. And of course, I would love to hear Walt Whitman read this aloud in his own voice. So I feel as if I'm communing with the writer as best as I can, because through his words, I feel something in my own voice that is a tug and a pull, like I'm on that train car. And if there's any great scholar that is, completely versed in Whitman, if they ever came across my very small little podcast here and listened to me, I'm sure there would be some criticism, but I would also, if I were to defend what I'm doing, I would say, actually, this is really pure, because I think if I'm Walt Whitman, and I think of myself, and I am an author, I've written a book, and I will continue to write. The idea for me, I think the greatest privilege and honor of any writer is that a reader who's willing to try to read what I've written, and I'm speaking for Whitman now, and I hope he'll forgive me, is just as much of a pleasure as it is to have sat down to write it. And hopefully that reader is versed enough and true enough with the attempt to give it the grace and the elegance that it deserves. And so as I read this, I'm trying to honor Walt Whitman, but I also feel him alive in me. And I feel alive in the idea of him being wherever he is, that there is this continuum that never ceases. And if I look forward to anything with the idea of dying, and I'm not trying to make it sound like that's what I'm focusing on, it's the idea that there is no end, that this really is just a moment of time in a relative space of time, that the time metric that we live in this moment, when it is traversed and crossed over, it broadens into something that makes a lot more sense. And all of a sudden, much like the rise of the sun in the morning, what we see at the dawn of that new moment, that juxtaposition, that traverse, the train car that crosses from this life into whatever comes next, that this clarity that comes has nothing to do with religion the way we think it does. And please don't be offended by my saying this, but it has everything to do with time and space and distance and perspective. And so all of the myths and the theology and the philosophy that we gain in this life, some is good, some isn't so good, all of a sudden it becomes moot. It becomes almost irrelevant, because what we see is this broad vista. And that's what Whitman, I really believe, was writing about in a lot of ways here, is that he gets into the weeds of the very bitter and the very hard and the very distasteful things of this life. Certainly if you listen to the last portion of what I just read, the massacre that takes place, and then also the sensual aspects, the pleasurable things. All of this is a full range of a spectral experience that we go through. And when we cross over, the only thing that we really take with us is the memory of the taste, of the feeling, of the sound in our ears, of the language that we carried, because that will enable us to further understand and see what is going to come. And we might remember where we've been before, or it might be something brand new, but it will bring to a full fruition why it was the experience of this life had to be the way it is. And that means that there is no answer right now. We just have to live in this moment and be as full and as human as possible. And this goes back to what I alluded to and mentioned directly, I shouldn't say alluded, at the very beginning of this reading, is that I think, this is my purpose, we have to fight against nihilism every single day. We have to take an active stand against meaninglessness and nothingness and anger and ignorance. We have to stand up, and we have to be alive in the language that we are earning, the language that we speak, and the language that imbues hope in the lives of those around us. And that, for me, is the purpose of this life, because I don't have the answers. I have no idea what comes after this. I know that I love the people I love, and I know that I love the idea of being an American, even in the moment when sometimes I think this country is such a mess that I can't even be proud of it. But I'm proud of it because of men like Walt Whitman, who felt and experienced what it was and what it is to be alive right now. Not only human, but in this human American experience, and I speak for my fellow Americans that might be listening, this is why we are here. We have to remember the human aspect of what it is to be American, to be human. That's what matters. So this is the conclusion of segment 2. I will be doing segment 3, I promise, shortly. I'm going to press through the final segments of this, and I'm going to finish this. And then I've got some things that I want to announce, and I'm really excited. This is a slow-moving process, but there is a lot coming, and my writing also is something that's very important to me, even though it comes in just these small little moments, and I do my level best to give it the attention that it deserves. And I hope someday, somewhere, down the line before I've drawn my last breath, that whatever I'm writing, whatever I'm saying crosses over into more of a mainstream, and people will say, you know what, I'm really glad this guy, Russell Cordell Staker, was fighting the good fight, even when he probably thought nobody was listening, because he's made my day better. That's my hope. Anyway, so once again, I get pretty emotional. I assure you, there's going to come a moment where there will be more humor to what it is that I'm trying to say. I keep telling myself, I'm like, Russell, you've got so much and such a range of things that you have to share, but I feel right now I'm still working through this deep, embedded sense of a very serious and a very sober aspect of my own humanity. And so it's very emotional right now, and I'm still processing through a lot of stuff that I think I've had just lying dormant for the vast majority of my life. And as I get through some of that, there is so much more and a broader range of expression to add to maybe a lighter tone as opposed to such a serious tone. But with Whitman, I feel very much aligned with what it was he was trying to write here. I wish you all a pleasant good afternoon or evening whenever this finds you. Please take good care of yourselves. And until next time, thank you for listening to the Small Hours Podcast. I'm Russell Cordell Staker. Thank you for being with me here in these small hours.